Malcolm, first thing I got to ask you, man, because your streak of playing 2,651 consecutive snaps to me is one of the most incredible, amazing feats that I've seen in such a violent sport. Monday night, third quarter, you finally missed a snap on a 3rd and 1, only snap you missed in the game. What happened?
You got to ask Dennis Allen about that. I just wasn't. It was a package that I just wasn't in. Yeah, and, I take a lot of pride in being available and being on the field, as much as possible. Uh, but it made me feel a lot better that we won the game.
All right. I thought maybe it was an equipment thing or something you had to run to the sideline for
No,
or whatever.
unfortunately, nah, not that time.
Okay. All right. Well, Malcolm, we've talked about many of the projects that you're involved with. And one of the latest, you were executive producer of the film Black Boys, which is now streaming on NBC Peacock. As the executive producer, what was the film's message that you wanted to convey to viewers?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of it deals around education and how Black boys interact with our educational system. It's a little bit unique and different than a lot of other people, but really it explored the humanity of Black boys and Black men and how it's under attack as early as um, grade school. And we want to tell stories about Black people that not are that are just aren't the subhuman images that we see or superhuman images that we see, but everything in between, the full spectrum, the joys, the insecurities, the hurt, the trauma, the creativity, the intellectualism, and not just the athlete or the entertainer. And it kind of breaks that down and shows the messages that we're telling our kids without even saying anything to them, whether it be in our schools, the literature that they read, the curriculums that we teach, or who they see as a teacher, with less than 2% of educators being Black men. So you can go your entire from 1 to 12 and never see a Black man stand in front of your classroom as a teacher. And what does that tell our kids, both Black and white, about what they think they can be? Those messages are kind of all around us, and we need to be cognizant of how that frames uh, the experience of schooling for Black boys.
Tell me about, Malcolm, the importance of your partnership now with Old Spice to extend the film's influence. And Old Spice has a 10-year initiative that's going to help increase high school graduation rates. That's the goal, by 10% in those underserved communities.
Yeah, I'm been really excited to partner with Old Spice on this initiative to raise graduation rates in young men, especially in underserved communities. And we're using the film Black Boys to really create some more dialogue amongst Black boys and be able to create spaces where they can feel comfortable in their own skin. So we popped up on a few local high schools here in New Orleans today, virtually, who and the students were able to screen the film, and then we had some conversation around what they took out of it, what are some things they resonated with, and to hear these young men, talk about the importance of mental health and talk about the psychological kind of effects that it has on them, or how it makes them feel when they walk into a space and can tell that people are afraid of them without even knowing who they are or what they're about. And so, the biggest thing is we need to be able to encourage Black boys to see themselves as more than just athletes and entertainers, see themselves more than what they can do with their bodies, but what can they do with their minds, what can they do with their creativity, uh, showing them that it is okay to be emotional, it is okay to laugh, to cry, to feel just as much as human as anybody else. And to encourage them to boldly walk in that, regardless of what the world or society might tell them.
I know you've mentioned before the emotional cost of racism, the toll that it takes. How did you personally overcome that? And what do you say to these youngsters who are still today victims of racism?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I have overcome it. I think it's
Mm.
something that I deal with daily. I just have learned the tools to maintain and cope. For me, the more and more I try to deal with these issues and try to face these things heads on, the more stress that comes along with it. And one of the things I had to insert into just kind of my weekly routine is therapy. And so mental health, anxiety, depression, all things that I had to deal with, and so every week for the last 3 years, I speak to my therapist just to be able to have a place to process my own feelings, my own stress, because it's real. And these things, sometimes we can suppress them because they're not as overt as we think, but it's in policy. It's in the way you walk into a room and people address you or people look at you. All of these things have an effect on you. And so it's just important that we create some awareness around that and some dialogue around it, but create safe spaces for Black boys to be able to explore who they are unapologetically.
I spoke to Jason McCourty and Jordan Matthews last week about your venture capital fund, Broad Street Ventures. First question about that, the name Broad Street, does that have anything to do with the Eagles, your time in Philly and riding down Broad Street for that parade?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that Broad Street is obviously very central to Philly. I think of Philly as my home, and so when we've been working on this fund for a little over a year now. And so when we started it, obviously I was still in Philly, but it's been an exciting endeavor to be able to create a vehicle for myself and my peers to invest and do some things collectively, and really get the education on how to build wealth, um, so that we can then serve our families, serve our communities, and invest in those that don't have uh, the opportunities that look like us. So it's been really, really important, to me, even to have Black women to be a part of that fund, because they are even, they have even more another layer of exclusion attached to them. We talk about sexism as well. So it's really important. Money is something that athletes sometimes don't talk to each other about. But when we can empower each other, we create, stronger men, which create stronger families, stronger communities. And we see this as an opportunity not only to build wealth, but to educate ourselves and provide opportunities for our peers.
Malcolm, we're in week 6 of the NFL season. Owners are meeting this week. How do you feel the league is doing with all of its social justice initiatives?
Well, I think, put all the tokenism aside, all of the things are great. You decorate the field with messages. That stuff is great, but I am encouraged by the voter registration and voter and election day kind of initiatives that the league has put out there. I think that's very, very important in the light of what's getting ready to happen in November. But I would love to see more from a policy standpoint, with teams getting involved in state and local policy, because that's where the real meat is when it comes to creating change. And we've seen the league use its political will to boost their business interests, and we love to see them use that same will, the same power, to create some of the changes in policy that players have been clamoring about, and more importantly, that the communities that they make their money in have been asking for.
Your team, the Saints, go into a bye at 3-2. What's been the biggest challenge for you guys this first quarter plus of the season?
Yeah, I think it's just really consistency, of everybody being on the same page. You really haven't found kind of that groove just yet. We're still finding ways to win games. We've got a lot of talent, but we've got to figure out, we've got some things to correct if we want to be playing significant football later in the year, because talent, only takes you so far. So we're at the bye. We can get rested up, get some guys back, and really, take a hard look at the last few weeks and continue with the process to improve as we open up again off the bye week back in the division.
I know you got to run. One last question for you. You and I have talked about the role of the church when it comes to social justice and racism in the past. I'd love to ask you again, what would you like to see from church leaders as it relates to ending racism or fighting racism?
Again, I think it just comes down to policy. And, I think people who are in the church and center themselves around this idea of love and equality, it can't just be a Sunday thing. It has to be a lifestyle. And society is in desperate need for everyone to do it. And I think churches specifically have an opportunity to have impact because they already have the organizational structure to do so. You have the congregation. And, one of the hardest parts about doing this stuff is the organizing. But churches are already organized. It just comes down to the leadership. Do they actually want to take on these issues that are plaguing the same communities that they serve.
Malcolm, as always, appreciate your time. Send a happy and blessed birthday to your mom.
Will do. Thank you.
Appreciate it.